All right, let's get this show on the road. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Lord of the Rings. We've been doing the show for almost 13 years. My name is Justin, and that is Clifford Broadway.
Well, hello, everybody. Has it been that many years? It is lovely to have the whole audience join us yet again. Justin, thank you. It's good to see you, good friend. And look at all these lovely people who are here with us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, streaming on all these platforms, Discord. Wonderful group of people, and you're all here with us right now. This is Torn Tuesday, your one-stop shop once a week for all the Tolkien news and rumors, and maybe a little bit of fun and mischief along the way. Welcome aboard. We have lots of news headlines to hit today. Let's get right to it.
Let's get right to it. A ton of headlines this week. Stephen Gallagher is privileged to be named alongside these titans that he has
Yes, indeed.
admired all of his career for the Impact 2024 Movie Music UK Awards. Of course, there it is at the bottom right, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim. Stephen Gallagher is the composer. We'll talk more about Lord of the Rings music, composers, and composition later in the show. But congrats to Stephen Gallagher and getting
Yeah.
nominated for another award for War of the Rohirrim.
Isn't
Uh,
that cool?
it really was worth it really is worth acknowledgement. Awards. I mean,
Yes,
it
very much.
Cliff, when you
Very
first
much.
watched War of the Rohirrim, which is now out on digital, um,
Yes.
didn't it sound exactly what you expected and more?
Yes, and more. Absolutely. You know, when I did my science fair project in sixth grade, I got honorable mention, and I was so proud. I was so proud of myself for having just gotten in there. It was so great. And, I'm sure that Mr. Gallagher, who is a gem of a person, he's such a gentleman. He's a gentleman and a scholar. He really is, and a good friend of ours. And I know he's very proud of this accomplishment. There is a lot going on as award season continues to move towards its ultimate end game, which is Oscar Sunday, where the Academy Awards will be broadcast the first weekend in March. I believe it's on March 3rd here in the States. So we're going to be seeing a lot of other um, producers guilds and the directors guilds and the Independent Spirit Awards and of course we recently had the Santa Barbara Film Festival announcing their award winners. Lots of stuff happening in this award season. I am so grateful that Stephen Gallagher got in here during award season to get this to get this acknowledgement. It's really cool.
Yeah, and Cliff, you know what's important about this week in particular?
Mm.
This is the week that Academy voters have to vote for the Oscars. This week,
Yes.
Monday through Friday, it's the final voting for the
And they have
final
to turn in their ballots.
Oscars.
Yes. Yes, indeed they
And I
do.
mean, turn in ballots. It's all done online now. And I just want everybody to
Hmm.
go to our YouTube later this week, after this show, later this week. It's a wonderful conversation we did earlier this year with cinematographer Greg Fraser, who did Dune 2, and he is nominated for an Oscar for his
Oh,
work on
boy,
Dune
did we
Part
have
2.
we had a really good conversation with him. And yes, I hope he wins cinematography for Dune Part Two. Excellent, excellent work, Greg Fraser. Wow, he is, like you said, he is the heir apparent to the great cinematographer Andrew Lesnie, who won so many Oscars and nominations working on both The Hobbit and original Lord of the Rings trilogy. So it's just so great to see uh, Greg in there. It's
He
great.
is up against Amelia Perez, which I don't think it has the energy to win a lot of awards, even though it got the most nominations for
Hmm.
Netflix. He's up against Maria Nosferatu and The
Oh, wow.
Brutalist.
Yeah, see, now, having seen Nosferatu and The Brutalist and Amelia Perez, I've seen almost every single nominee. This is a tough category. It's tough, but I think that the most outstanding work rises to the top, the cream of the crop, so to speak, and that would be Dune 2. Boy, was he firing on all cylinders. But
And
wow,
in our conversation that you can, it's free to watch. It's on YouTube. It's nearly 2 hours, but he talks about how they got some of those looks. I mean, it isn't just color grading. When you see the red planet, the opening scene that is all red, and when you go to what's the black and white planet Prime, like they shot all of that in camera. That is not digital grading. Like cinematographer Greg Fraser gave us some wonderful stories of using Christmas lights to light a scene in a car. And I mean, it was very reminiscent of Andrew Lesney using Christmas lights for Galadriel's starry eyes. So
yes,
for any Oscar voters, we know there's two of you here. For any Oscar voters that watch this show, please, our recommendation is Greg Fraser for Best Cinematography for Dune 2.
agreed.
Please vote for him this year. And if you need that extra oomph, please check out our 2-hour interview with him on our YouTube channel, which
Yes,
is just
check it out for sure. Justin, do you
wonderful
think
thing.
it's odd for a big fan of J.R.R. Tolkien like myself to also be completely enamored with Frank Herbert and his world building? Do you find that is a rather sympathetic approach that one writer and another share certain themes and ideas, and certainly a greater concern for ecological issues than a lot of other 20th century writers did? I don't know. How do you feel? Are you also a big Frank Herbert fan? Have you ever read the books?
I haven't even finished reading all of Tolkien's books, so I definitely haven't read any Frank Herbert's books.
Oh,
And
okay.
as a true
See,
fan, I adopt Tolkien's perspective on the world at large. And Tolkien refused to read more than half of Dune. He actually got quite perturbed. We see it in the letters
yeah,
that
he didn't like it.
Tolkien did
Yeah.
not like Dune, and
He's
he
like,
didn't like
don't send me any
everybody
more
telling
copies.
him.
I don't want to
Yeah.
bother. Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
if Tolkien didn't
Well,
like
that was
Dune,
the point of my question. That was the source of my question. I mean, Professor Tolkien didn't care for Frank Herbert, but when I was growing up, I was 11, 12 years old, I couldn't get enough. I was deeply fascinated by the way that both writers have put deeply woven environmental and ecological concerns into their narrative. Interesting to me always that Professor John Ronald Reuel Tolkien never really cared for Mr. Herbert, but I found both of them were kind of simpatico in certain ways. But maybe that's just my take on it.
well, anyway, Dune, I love the movies. I love the movies. I've
Hmm.
watched them. I've watched Dune Part 1 and Part 2 for so many times. I saw each of them in theaters more than 5 times.
On
Um,
IMAX. Me
on
too. Me too. Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm with you,
the
man.
movies
Yeah.
are incredible, and Greg Fraser, he has never done a fantasy show. He's never done a fantasy movie. Andy Serkis, if you're listening, we know you're directing the next Lord of the Rings film.
Oh,
Call
yes.
Greg.
Call Greg. Oh, you're so right. Justin, I back you up 100% on that. Andy, call Greg. He's right there. He might not be busy right now. Maybe he's going to start working, however, with Denis Villeneuve on Dune Part 3. Maybe that will happen. That will take him off the table. But boy, wouldn't that be a great thing for Andy to
Speaking
work with
of
him?
Denis Villeneuve, he was spotted in the audience this last weekend at the Saturn Awards. I believe we talked a
Hmm.
little bit about the Saturn Awards. They're a big fantasy and sci-fi award show. They were doing a tribute to William Shatner, but Denis Villeneuve was there in the audience along with Nick Cage. Rings of Power was nominated. As far as we heard, Amazon did not send anybody associated with the show to the awards ceremony, but not only Denis Villeneuve, the director of Dune, was there, the director of Alien, Romulus, Fede Alvarez, was there. William Shatner, Nicolas Cage. So many luminaries were at the Saturn Awards. You could stream it on Roku when it was going on. So it was kind of surprising that nobody from Rings of Power attended the award ceremony with such luminaries as Alien director and Dune director and so on and so forth. So hopefully that.
Indeed.
Speaking of War of the Rohirrim, we have breaking news today. We can confirm that War of the Rohirrim is coming to HBO Max or Max this month, February 28th. That's right. We are 2017. We're 17 days away from you being able to stream to your heart's content War of the Rohirrim. And of course, that wonderful soundtrack and that beautiful song at the end by Paris Paloma. So Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim will be on HBO at the end of the month, and it'll be on HBO Max February 28th. We believe worldwide.
So cool. That is so cool. Ario is in the chat asking, what was it that Professor Tolkien disliked about Dune? Well, we don't know for sure, but you can make some speculations based upon the content of both books that Professor Tolkien was definitely all about hope against despair and a moral ideal of man, while Dune is a lot more depressing and the lead character makes immoral choices for the greater good. Tolkien would never have abided by that. So there might be some interesting speculation. We could talk about that some other time, or maybe an article could be written. Maybe there already has been articles written, but he really disliked it with some intensity. We'll just leave it at that. Are you, Justin, are you monitoring the Oscars to the point where are you going to a big Oscar event on March 3rd?
I don't know.
There's a big Oscar party.
There's nothing I'm really interested in nominated, so I don't know. But we do have a quote. Oh, let me bring this up. Wrong screen.
It'll be Monday,
let's
March
bring
2nd,
this up.
I believe. It's
Tolkien
Sunday, March
writing
2nd.
about Frank Herbert, he says, it is impossible for an author, this is Tolkien writing, it is impossible for an author still writing to be fair to another author working along the same lines. Let's deconstruct this statement from Tolkien about Frank Herbert's Dune. First off, first sentence, you can sense the competitive nature of Tolkien right there in that first sentence.
That's because of the context of what he was asked. He was asked to review or give his personal review and thoughts on the accomplishments of Dune. And it wasn't just like, hey, did you enjoy the book? Tolkien was
No,
asked
it was exactly that. You're incorrect. His friend John Bush had sent him a second copy of Dune saying, hey, man, did you get the first copy? Did you read it yet? That was it. That's the prompt for this letter. Okay?
Yeah, but he wasn't asked to be silent about it. I'm not wrong on this point. Tolkien was asked to share his erudition and his feelings on Frank Herbert's accomplishment, and he was really reluctant to do it because he did not want to be unkind or discourteous. That is why the opening sentence is written the way it is. It's impossible for another author still writing to be fair to another author working along the same lines. He didn't want to be so rude or discourteous to say, I'm going to write a whole big review of Dune and, take a crap on it.
But he's saying that he feels competition. He's in that line, working along the same lines. He views Frank Herbert
that's one
as competition.
Take. Maybe. I've heard you say that before, but is it really competition, or is it to say he is an active author of speculative fiction, and I am also an active author in speculative fiction, and I don't want to be in this unfair position of degrading or disparaging what Mr. Herbert is trying to do.
Well, let's continue with this comment. At least I find it so. In fact, I dislike Dune with some intensity.
Yes, that's what he said. But he didn't want to go any further. He also says,
that is a bold statement.
Wait, but it's also mitigated by the next half of his sentence. And in that unfortunate case, it is much the best and fairest to another author to keep silent and refuse to comment. This is amazing because it shows a characteristic that is really missing these days. Professor Tolkien, instead of getting online to make a hot take and being really nasty and toxic, he decided I'd better keep my mouth shut instead of contributing to a toxic conversation. That means Professor Tolkien decided to take the high road here. Really.
I don't know. It'd take the high road or say I
Yep.
dislike Dune with some intensity. That's as
Yeah.
bold
Yep.
a review as you can say. He says, he continues, would you like me to return the book as I already have one or to hand it on?
Like a matham, like a passed around gift that gets passed around and passed around, one gift giving to another gift giving. I get that. I totally get it.
So,
But
so
I
that,
I
that,
appreciate his high moral approach, which is if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. It was enough for him to say, I dislike this so much. You're asking the wrong guy to review the book and give all this feedback on it because I don't want to be toxic and negative towards Mr. Herbert. I really appreciate Tolkien's approach, really.
All right, so that's your answer on whether Tolkien liked Dune, and so
He didn't.
he did not, but I love the movies, and Greg Fraser deserves an Oscar.
Yes.
Speaking of
Yes.
talking junk on other people,
Hmm.
Orlando Bloom posted this clarification. Elon Musk this week tweeted that Orlando Bloom had received U.S. aid government money to travel to Ukraine for press photo ops. Kind of a deep
Mm.
state conspiracy that Elon Musk is raiding U.S. aid to find conspiracies. And Orlando Bloom says misinformation can be easily spread. All of my work with UNICEF has been done in a voluntary capacity, and I've never received compensation for U.S. aid or UNICEF. Any
There you
reports
go.
to the contrary are completely untrue.
There you go.
Orlando
Thank you.
Bloom officially confirms that
And
Elon
setting
Musk
the record
is
straight.
lying to you and
Oh,
lying to
well,
everybody.
as he continues to do a great deal, as he brings our country closer and closer to a very, very difficult governmental crisis because of how many laws he is breaking. So yeah, very intriguing. A
But
person who
on
was
other Orlando Bloom news, he was the only Lord of the Rings actor to be involved in a Super Bowl commercial this weekend. That's right. You did see
I saw
Orlando
that.
Bloom
Yep.
selling cruises, our cruise
Cruise
line.
lines. Yep.
So there you go. Congrats to I expected a few more Lord of the Rings related commercials, but we did not get any. The only tangentially related Lord of the Rings things at the Super Bowl this year was Orlando Bloom in a big Super Bowl commercial selling cruises. So congrats to Orlando for getting some hopefully
Yep.
well-paid work, and thank you Orlando for setting the record straight because lies and lying liars don't need to be trusted. We've got
Exactly.
John
Wait, was that
Howe.
Katy Perry with him co-starring in that commercial? Was that
He's
his?
no, he's married to
That
Katy
wasn't.
Perry. That
I
was a
know, but I know he's married to Katy Perry, but I was wondering, anyways, because I was not really paying attention um, during the Super Bowl. They were passing out fresh slices of pizza at the bar where I was at, and I was much more distracted by a slice of good old sausage pizza. I didn't even notice that there was somebody co-starring with Orlando in that commercial, and I didn't know who it was, but never mind. Whatever.
John Howe is has a brand new original book coming out. John Howe's Cathedral, an illustrated tale. Low international shipping costs. This will be on a Kickstarter, a crowdfunding campaign pretty soon. I could not find a link.
Wow.
Um,
Is this a graphic novel, so to speak?
it's basically as much of a graphic novel as John Howe will do. I am excited about original work, not based on any literary IP from John Howe. This is
Nice.
John Howe's and his pure imagination creating a world from whole cloth. And I'm very interested in that.
That sounds really cool to me.
And remember on last week's show, we reported that John Howe has reported to work for a big new project. And it could be anyone's guess whether it's Rings of Power Season 3 or The Hunt for Gollum feature film from Warner Brothers. But pencils are sharpened and he is back at work, but he hasn't been sitting on his laurels in the downtime between seasons. So,
This looks like a project I could get behind. This is really cool.
well, there you go.
Yeah,
The
this looks
official
really, really
endorsement
cool.
from Clifford Broadway.
Oh, the first of many, I'm sure.
Our
That
first
that looks really
little
neat.
bad news of the week, Netflix has declined to release Tales of the Shire on
Oh
mobile platforms.
no, 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 no. Is that really happening? Oh, come on.
Netflix won't release the 6 previously planned games, and of course, the game that got all of the news was Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game.
Yes.
Based on that small list, I think it's the only big licensed IP game.
Wow. Do you know
So
what? This is weird. I mean, as the streaming wars continue to get more unusual, and they're charging more money, and then taking more content offline so that no one can ever see it anywhere. There's no physical media. Does that mean if you want to play Tales of the Shire, you have to invest in a console or in a laptop that is a
yep,
PC?
it'll be a
Definitely not a MacBook. I have been told over and over again I will not be able to use my MacBook Air, the one I'm using right now, to broadcast to everyone. So if I want to play Tales of the Shire, I'm going to have to get either a PC simulator that works on my MacBook, or I'm going to have to invest in a whole new set of equipment. This is a bummer to hear this.
yeah. And it
Bummer.
was kind of a big deal that Netflix had made a deal just a few months ago to bring Tales of the Shire to mobile platforms, which is your iPhone or iPad or Android phone. So currently,
Right.
we don't know what that means for the rights to mobile version of this game. So we know it's coming out for Switch, Xbox,
Wow.
PlayStation, and PC. But now, will it come out for mobile platforms? We don't know yet because Netflix has officially decided not to release Tales of the Shire, which I
I
believe is
agree.
coming out in April.
I agree with Higgy Baby in the chat that a Nintendo Switch is a worthy investment. I totally, totally agree with that. Couldn't agree more with that. That'd be super, super fun to have one of those.
That's right.
Um,
In other gaming news,
wow.
we've got the Lord of the Rings Online as an official Discord now.
Oh,
That's
good.
right.
That's good.
We
Nice
tell
to have
you
them in the community.
we tell you guys every week you should join our Discord. And one of the reasons was the Lord of the Rings online devs have been in our Discord along with the Return to Moria devs.
Yes.
So many wonderful people are in our Discord. It's the biggest Tolkien server that you can get there. But now there's a new server. Now that you've created a Discord account for Torn, now you can use the same account and now join the official Lord of the Rings online Discord. Um, and so that is something to do. Cliff, there's something else about Lord of the Rings Online that I'm very, very
Tell me.
proud to say is that there's a thread on Reddit this week that said, "What online game has the most positive community?" And
Oh, and
it has
guess who the answer is clearly.
548 comments, and right there at the top was a big, lots of upvotes. Says, not that I played anymore, but Lord of the Rings Online always had an amazing community, as
Yes.
95% of the people who played it just loved Tolkien's work.
Yep, that's great. You know, and well deserving. To say there's still a place on the internet that is not turned into a toxic hellscape, and it happens to be Lord of the Rings Online. That is really cool. That is an excellent feather in their cap. Well done to the people who, the developers, and to the people who run and mod the online community there.
So yeah,
Congratulations.
so
That's
so join
well
the
done.
Lord of the Rings
Well done.
official online Discord. There's a link on their main blog at LotRO com, of course. We already got
Nice.
that. Other news, Sean Bean to play the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood series at Prime. That's right. Amazon owns MGM. So here we go.
That's right.
Amazon is getting into the Sean Bean business. I'm so excited. Uh,
So cool. You know what? I don't want to admit this out loud, but maybe I should. I was just rewatching the original 1973 Disney's animated Robin Hood with the excellent Peter Ustinov delivering a brilliant performance as Prince John. Absolutely hilarious, so fun. And, you know, it was obviously the movie that single-handedly started the furry movement. It's Maid Marian and Robin Hood, you can't get any more cute than that. And it's so funny. I'm a big fan of these classic Sherwood Forest tales. A big fan of the Kevin Costner Robin Hood, and of course, the inevitable Men in Tights. Hilarious, great parody of Robin Hood. But this stuff is probably going to be a bit more gritty and maybe serious. I mean, maybe. Do you think they're going to like really go for authenticity and historic authenticity in this version of Robin Hood? I'm looking forward to it.
I didn't actually read it. Who will play the titular? Jack Patton will play Robin Hood, and Sean Bean will. The vision
Okay, who's
of the sheriff of Nottingham is unique: a statesman, a strategist, and a builder of Nottingham itself. A loving father, a politician, and cousin to King Henry II, he
oh
navigates the
my.
dangerous tides of power, facing not only an outlaw in the woods, but also the ambitions of Eleanor of Aquitaine and the Norman barons that surround him. He's cunning and pragmatic. He is a man who rules with an iron hand, not out of cruelty, but unshakable belief that the law, as Normans see it, must be preserved. Um,
Who
that is an
Wow, that's
incredible
interesting.
character description. And Amazon, if you're going to bring in any new characters for season 3, please share something like that. We would love to get character descriptions like that when casting is announced.
I wonder, who is this actor who's going to play Robin Hood again? Who is this?
Uh, Jack Patton. I don't know.
Don't
All right.
know. Is that
And while
Patten?
That's right. And while Cliff's looking that up, we got other casting news. This movie poster just came out today. Yes, that is Carl Urban, Aomer himself, as Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh, he was in War Machine.
That's
Okay.
right. Carl Urban is playing Johnny Cage, and he got his own poster uh, in universe movie because in Mortal Kombat, Johnny Cage is a movie actor that is called to fight in the big tournament. So
Yes.
Carl
Yes.
Urban is Johnny Cage. Uh, this is a wonderful official movie poster from the studio. That means that I believe this can almost confirm that Carl Urban will be at San Diego Comic-Con this year. Between this poster, Mortal Kombat 2, and The Boys new season,
Yes.
Carl Urban's almost guaranteed to be at Comic-Con. I
Yes,
think I
indeed.
heard the news a while ago, but I forgot it. And then there was a couple there was the actors strikes and all that stuff. So this came as a total surprise to me today. And yeah, Anonymous Girl, I completely forgot he was cast. So this looks great. I'm
This is
really
so funny.
um
Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is coming back to us in a very, very big way. This is super cool, but more particularly cool is looking at the overall career trajectory of Carl Urban. Look at where he's gone over the past 2 decades from being the most amazing Eomer and then going on to do really cool indie films in New Zealand, like The Price of Milk, and then going on to very large scale Hollywood productions like the Judge Dredd movie. Wow, the Dredd movie. That was so good. And now here he is, a mainstay in our living rooms as the lead character in The Boys. It is great to see Carl Urban succeed to
And
this
by the
level.
way, he
And
joined the
it's just
Marvel
so great.
Universe to be the henchman for Kate Blanchett's
Oh, not to
Howe or
mention, not
Hera.
please. How could I have forgotten that he was the henchman to well, he wasn't Asgardian, but he decided to ally himself
I
with
love that
Hela.
comment. Imran
That's
in
right.
that in the chat room says, "I wonder if
Yes.
he's going to learn how to do the splits." Yes, in Mortal Kombat 1, Johnny Cage's power move was he does the splits and does an uppercut. Very much like Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I think the concept behind Johnny Cage was to be like Jean-Claude Van Damme. I love that. That's a great comment. So anyway, Carl Urban.
Oh, and he was also in Trek. He was in the Kelvin timeline of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek series.
Oh,
How
that's
could we
right.
have forgotten that he played Bones McCoy with perfection? And he played it to perfection opposite Simon Pegg and Zachary Quinto, all those great actors. So good. So good.
Cliff, I wanted to bring up one fan casting that was on Reddit today, and we don't report on every fan casting, but I thought this was inspired. If Rings
Mm,
of Power ever decides to bring in Celeborn and then bring in Celeborn and Galadriel's daughter,
yes.
some fan cast posted on Reddit, and it got a ton of upvotes and a ton of comments. Cliff, I want you to comment on this post.
Okay. Bring it. Yes, I
Please
saw that.
cast her as
Yep.
Celebrian. Mackenzie
Yep.
Foy, you'll recognize her as
Yeah.
the daughter in Interstellar.
Yes, all grown up. Would you believe how? And the post mentions the most obvious is how much she looks similar to Liv Tyler. Um, that's really cool, and I think that's a great fan casting idea. She would be fabulous as Celebrian.
Would you
Um,
be okay with a time jump that just
yeah,
introduces the family?
absolutely. If we're Are we looking at Arwen's mom? Yes, thank you. Please more, sir. As Oliver Twist would say, please, sir, can I have some more? That is a great casting for Celebrian. She's lovely.
And Celebrian marries Elrond. And one of the
Yes.
tricky things that
Yes.
the writers introduced in season 2 of Rings of Power was Elrond kisses Galadriel. Uh
Yeah, don't
so
mention that. Do we
I
have to
but
do that again?
but we can totally see, especially with the brown hair, we could totally see that this actress would be perfect for Celebrian, Elrond's eventual future wife, because she
Hmm,
does look different enough than Galadriel. Uh,
yes.
she still has elven features, and she looks so close to Arwen. And as we know, Rings of Power is meant to visually be a prequel to Peter Jackson's movies.
Right.
So, I just thought this was a wonderful fan casting, and I love that the community was so positive around this. It's not just LOTRO. I mean, we've got such an amazing community that can have wonderful conversations about this. So, Amazon, if you're listening, listen to the fans.
Yes, indeed. That is always the best advice. Absolutely. I think she's great. Uh, we still have to fan cast Gilrayan, who will be Aragorn's mother, but that might be not at all in the wheelhouse of Rings of Power. That's a question for Andy Serkis, and Andy Serkis is casting director. They're going to have to figure out who's going to be Aragorn's mom, Gilrayan. They'll have to figure that out for the hunt for Gollum.
Well, Hunt for Gollum takes place after Bilbo's birthday party, so I don't think that's true.
Around it, it takes place before and during and after. It kind of takes place around it.
All of the reports that we received so far is that the starting point for the Hunt for Gollum is Bilbo's birthday party. So it takes place after Bilbo's birthday.
Not strictly speaking, according to the chronology of the books, but sure, if they want to do that in the show, I mean, in the movie, then they could do that. But very strictly speaking, the hunt for Gollum and the activities around it kind of happen. I mean, the overall encompassing events, Gandalf being suspicious of Bilbo's ring, starting from there. That happened before the birthday party, and then leading on to Gandalf having conversations with the Northern Rangers to have them increase their guard around the borders of the Shire. That happened before Bilbo's birthday party. So there's options around there to consider that it's before, during, and after Bilbo's party. But yeah, sure.
All right. Well, we like the casting, but I guess we should move on to our main story tonight. We got some very sad news this morning, and we couldn't find any news posts about it. This is coming direct from sources close to the family and inside the UK music industry.
Yes.
But
The UK music industry really, really felt this loss. This is the loss of John Kurlander, ladies and gentlemen, the man
John
who worked.
Kurlander, this is his website right here.
He worked
He is
so much with all the things that you know, but you didn't know that he worked on them. Really, let's just say that.
so John Kurlander is a sound engineer. He's the guy that sits behind the big scary mixing board
The big scary mixing board, yes.
when the you're recording the music, and yes, that is a photo from the Lord of the Rings sessions. John Kurlander is a legend going all the way back. Let me see if I can find that photo of him and Peter. So there's a picture of him and Peter. John Kurlander is Howard Shore's, or was Howard Shore's, right-hand man, sound
Yes.
mixer. And
Yes.
and to the point where, if you look at the Grammy Awards, I mean, Lord of the Rings has won so many awards, but if we go down to the Grammy Awards, which just happened this
Indeed.
last week,
Yes.
all three Lord of the Rings films won a Grammy for Best Score. All
Yes, they
three
did.
Lord of the Rings films won for Best Score. They didn't even win for the Two Towers, for technical reasons that's now affecting Dune Part 2 and Hans Zimmer. But whatever.
You mean
Grammy
didn't even
Awards.
win the Oscar? Didn't even win the Oscar for the Two Towers. But the Grammys were much more clear in giving the awards to the three films 3 years in a row. But yes.
So look
Yeah.
at that. He is credited on the Grammy Award right next to Howard Shore.
Yes,
This is
he
how
is.
important he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We love to celebrate all the below the line people. We've had many on the show, but it's this is one. John Kurlander is one of those secret weapons that it helped make Lord of the Rings as incredible, and he was so influential, and his role is so important. You wouldn't know it from the credits, because you don't see him in any of the many of the behind the scenes interviews, but he is
Indeed.
credited alongside John Kurlander and Howard Shore right there. He won 3 Grammy Awards for each of the Lord of the Rings films out of his 4 total lifetime wins, and 2 additional nominations. That's right. So John Kurlander passed away this last weekend. He worked with Howard Shore on the Lord of the Rings, and he is probably second to most responsible for the success of the music of Lord of the Rings.
Yep, I would agree. Yes.
And in our research today, we found a wonderful interview with him that he talks about getting the gig. Let's bring this up.
We were backing it up.
Yes.
I tell you, we weren't brave enough to do a whole film score without backing it up on tape. But we actually had the first rig that could do 48 I/O, and the rest is history.
I just want to pause there real quick. He just said that he was the first engineer to have a 48-track mixing board for
Wow.
Pro Tools. In fact, he was one of the first adopters of Pro Tools. If you know anything about music composition right now and music mixing, Pro Tools is the standard. The standard is Pro Tools.
Yes, it is.
If you make music for film, if you make music for Spotify, if you mix anything, Pro Tools is the thing. And he was a beta tester on Pro Tools. He was a beta tester on Pro Tools, and he's the one that called Pro Tools up and says, "Hey, can you make a 48 channel software version of Pro Tools?" And he was a beta tester on it. And because he was a beta tester, I'll let him continue the story.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Are you still working with film scoring, recording,
Yeah.
orchestras, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing film scores, pretty much for the first few years. And then I got a composer that I had worked with for several years called me up and said, I'm working on this movie and the producer's going to call you. And I want you to say, whatever he says, just agree to do it. So this guy calls me from New Zealand and he says, I'm in New Zealand and we're working on a low budget independent movie with a director that you've probably never heard of.
I know where this is going.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yes,
Exactly.
Yes. I like the low budget independent movie. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It turned out not to be low budget and just
definitely not an independent movie.
And not an independent movie. But that took up the next 4 years of my life.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And where were you working on that?
Originally, the first sessions were in New Zealand, where I think they had a subplot that they wanted to do the whole thing there. But Howard Shaw, the composer, had said, no, we're going to do it in London. I'll just do this first half hour of music just to keep you happy. But if I agree to that, you have to agree that we're going to do the rest of it in London. So but there's still in the first movie and Fellowship, there's still about 25 minutes of music that was recorded in New Zealand.
And how long of a period were you there working in New Zealand?
In New Zealand, it was about 2 weeks.
Right.
It was like a week of recording and a week of mixing.
And when you went back to do all the Lord of the Rings stuff back in England, did you go to Abbey Road?
We went to 3 places. We recorded at Abbey Road, at Ayr, and in a town hall in Watford.
In
But
Watford?
only you and I would know where Watford is.
It's funny, yes.
Right.
The Watford Gap, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Incredible insight here.
Wow.
So Howard Shore basically tells him, hey, a producer's going to call you, and whatever he says, just say yes. Can you imagine the rapport this man has with Howard Shore when he says, just say yes?
That is so perfect. But he said, I got a call from a composer I hadn't worked with for a few years, which you know what? And I'm with you. Anonymous Girl in the chat and many others are being mind blown by looking at his curriculum vitae. The whole list on the IMDb of all the movies that he worked on as a sound mixer, quite an impressive list of motion pictures that John Kurlander worked on. It is surprising how prolific he was working in film scores. These are industry people who work professionally, and Howard knew to call him up and knew to say, you're the best of the best, just play along, just say yes. And I suppose that phone call included Howard Shore maybe spilling the beans, maybe not. Can you imagine Howard Shore saying, I can't really tell you, but you have to say yes. Do this movie and work with me. You have
That's
to
how
say
excited Howard Shore was about
yeah,
this,
of course.
and how technically difficult it would be that he needed a rock star like John Kurlander. Now let's back up before I play the next clip, because he goes into kind of the nuts and bolts, and I've learned some stuff about the recording of Lord of the Rings. But let's back up. John Kurlander. There he is with Howard Shore, or with Peter Jackson.
With PJ, yes.
Look at this video game.
Wow.
Video game list. The video game projects include. Let me bring
Knights
this up
of the
on
Old
screen.
Republic. Kotor. He worked on Knights of the Old Republic. Kotor.
He worked on Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, The Forced Unleash, Prototype, Assassin's Creed, Dragon Age 2, Lord of the Rings War in the North, World of Warcraft, StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty, Diablo 3. Cliff, these are
Wow.
all the biggest legendary sci-fi and fantasy games of all time.
Massive, just crazy pants.
Dude,
He worked on
Dragon
some
Age
of
is wow.
I mean, wow. He also won another Grammy Award for Calling All Dawns, Best Classical Crossover. Wow.
So he after Lord of the Rings. Wait, was this after Lord of the Rings? Yeah, this was after Lord of the Rings because Knights of the Old Republic was after Lord of the Rings. He jumped into video games and was the main lead sound engineer for the scoring of all the music for StarCraft, Diablo, World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim, Soul Calibur, Lord of the Rings, Dragon Age, Assassin's
Wow.
Creed. Like this guy has engineered the greatest music of video game history, and that was after winning all the Oscars and all the Grammys for Lord of the Rings. He also worked on the Hurt Locker, Master and Commander, 310 to Yuma, The Aviator, Anastasia. And listen, he even put his AOL email address on the internet. I mean, this guy was so good at what he does, and he kept
wow.
such a low profile.
That's brave. Here's my AOL address. Email me. That's so brave.
But it gets better than that.
Now, if you go into the Wayback Machine, he worked on complete studio cast recordings of West Side Story and The King and I, this massive period of huge Broadway musical cast albums with EMI producer and songwriter Norman Newell. That's insane.
But
that
Cliff,
he worked on these classics.
This is
Just
where it gets
insane.
crazy. We all know Peter Jackson won an Emmy Award for the Beatles Get Back documentary. And
He did.
Peter Jackson just won with the Beatles a new Grammy for their song that came out that he did the music video to this year. We know Peter Jackson is a huge Beatles fan. Check
Now
this
and
out.
Then. The song was Now and Then. Yes, that's right.
John Kurlander's first major assignment was the assistant engineer on the Beatles' Abbey Road album.
I can't. What a classic. I mean, wow. Pure history. No wonder Howard wanted to work with him because of his background, the breadth and experience that John had. Wow.
Not just Howard, Peter.
Yeah,
Can you-
Peter as well, of course, wanted to work with him. Of course, that is the connecting tissue. That's why Peter said to his producers, call this guy. And Howard at least had the good sense to call John Kurlander ahead of time and say, whatever it is, just say yes. Just say yes. Do it.
So Peter Jackson, the ultimate Beatles fanboy, like the Emmy-winning ultimate Beatles fanboy, Peter Jackson, he's working on Lord of the Rings. It's his big movie break, and they're like, and they say, hey, we can get the engineer from Abbey Road, not just the studio, because he ran the Abbey Road studios for Apple for 30 years, but he can get the sound engineer that produced the Beatles' Abbey Road album, worked on Lord of the Rings.
Wow. That
When you
is
talk
super
about
cool.
legends,
He
this
is one.
guy,
Absolutely.
this guy was an absolute legend. Let's roll another clip from this wonderful conversation.
Yes,
Standard
please.
height of the ceiling and the standard makeup of the canopy. They called it a canopy.
So when you were doing the Lord of the Rings and moving between those two rooms in particular,
Yeah.
were you choosing to go to a room for a specific sound, or was it just based on availability?
The film studio, which actually was not an independent film,
And not low budget.
and not low budget. They they didn't really believe that the sessions were going to be spread out over like 3.5 months for each film. They're in denial. They say, oh, we'll be done in 2 or 3 weeks. And it wasn't. So we were moving around maybe 2 or 3 times a week. We'd do a session at Watford, break it down, move to Abbey Road, do another 2 days, go back to Ayr. So we were going between Watford, Ayr, and Abbey Road in rotation over a period of 3 months. And what I did is I figured out a setup that would work for all 3 locations, knowing that we were going to be, I could tell from the booking schedule, we're going to be going around.
Did you work out these setups so that things could be interchangeable?
I used the same mics and the same mic pre's. And the main trick is identical. So same height, same angles, everything. So what happened is we would get together at Abbey Road for the mix. And we did a playback pretty early on of a piece that was 8 minutes long. The first 4 minutes had been recorded at Watford. And then there was a join, and it went to the second 4 minutes were from Abbey Road. But nobody could really hear, because of the matching of levels and so, couldn't really hear the join, even though it was in the middle of playing. But after this 8-minute playback, I was going, the first 4 minutes sound slightly different. The reverb tail is slightly different to the second 4 minutes. And the editor said, well, where's the edit? I said, I don't know. It was somewhere around there, but I really couldn't hear where the edit was. But I just had a different feeling. And Howard said to me, could we do, I want to redo this because Peter Jackson wants to change here. We're going to be at Ayr next week. Do you think we could do a 16-bar insert at Ayr? It said, will it work? I said, yeah, sure. It'll match. So we did that. From that point on, I basically enabled him. I kept on encouraging. Every time he said, could we do another patch? We're going to be at Watford again. Can we do a patch here into the Abbey Road thing? And can we do this, that? Every time we did an insert, the sound of the score became more and more anonymous.
I understand.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, and I have to try and explain that these edits got more and more crazy, and you were never listening to one room for more than about 8 bars.
Incredible.
So the more edits we did, it became, where was this recorded? It doesn't sound like anywhere, because it's changing like that. It's like when you watch a video that's been edited so fast and you kind of, where are we?
You mentioned using same mics and same pre.
Cliff, let's talk.
Wow.
Let's talk through this a little bit, and unpack what Grammy and Oscar winner of Lord of the Rings was just saying. They were recording tiny little segments of the soundtrack at all times, and then putting it together in the editing timeline. And one of the reasons that the entire soundtrack sounds so ethereal and cannot be placed and doesn't sound of one single recording, it sounds superhuman. Because, as he said, you're not hearing more than 8 bars at a time from any of the 3 studio locations. And each studio has its own sound. Cliff, you're a voice actor. You can attest to this.
Yes, every studio has its own acoustics and quality, but that is the type of stuff that's better exemplified not when you're in a little tiny voice recording booth as a single actor, but when you've got a 27-piece orchestra or more and chorus and extra percussion and other extra weird instruments that Howard Shore was famous for pulling into the project. When you're in a different cathedral space or in a different Abbey Road space in a room that size, they really do have different sounds because of the way these rooms are set.
So how do you record 8 bars at a time and still
I
make
can't.
the incredible soundtrack recordings, the complete recordings?
I can't imagine how difficult it was trying to catalog that stuff and run a complete inventory, if you will, or a database, if you will, of all the sources and all the sounds. Can you imagine the internal chaos that could be possible if anything was labeled wrong or put in the wrong? Can you imagine put in the wrong spot, or you press the wrong button and a different mix is there instead of the one you had? Oh, I cannot imagine the level of technical exactitude that would have to be done to manage that. It's really even more impressive when you think about it.
And that's why this guy is a rock star.
Yes.
That's why John Kurlander was known as a rock star. He
Yeah.
recorded the Beatles' Abbey Road. He recorded Toto's Africa.
Amazing, amazing album.
But like, he's done 700 albums, many of them
Yes.
huge successes. He engineered 700 albums, and then he was a
He
beta
engineered
tester.
West Side Story for
And
heaven's
then he was
sake.
a beta tester
Wow.
on Pro Tools. That's the other thing I want to bring up about the Pro Tools.
Worthy note. Yes.
One of the reasons The Lord of the Rings is such a special movie is that Peter Jackson and the whole team at Weta pushed the envelope with their massive technology. Cliff, what was massive?
Now, Massive was the software used to create large armies, but to give individual movements of the little guys on screen a programming that allowed them to move on their own, so that it seemed much more realistic and organic, that you weren't just moving lots of little tiny soldiers in uniformity, but you were moving them and they each had their own weight and gravity and movement and scale, so that they could move on their own with an individualism that had allowed way more photorealistic approach to doing massive armies across a big battlescape and a battleground. And that is why it had the nickname Massive. That's what that
Right.
software
It was doing it was the first time that you could do giant orc armies, giant horse armies without having to
Yeah.
without having 10,000 horses at the ready. Massive was a monumental feat. They won all the technical Oscars. What I haven't realized until today, Cliff, is that the sound design and sound mixing were equally as technologically advanced on Lord of the Rings. I don't think we've ever talked about how they were using beta technology with Pro Tools 48 channel mixing
Wow.
to make the oral landscapes of Howard Shore and those movies. What you saw, what Weta was able to do visually, stunning technical achievement, John Kurlander was doing for audio and music. And that's why his name is on the Grammy Award with Howard Shore. Absolute
Wild.
legend.
Yes, I agreed. When you put it in that context, it makes perfect sense. And the the Grammys knew that, and they knew to give John Kurlander the appropriate credit for making that album, that soundtrack album, sound the way it sounded. It's a lot of work. Oh, this is great that you've got some great clips from this interview, Justin.
We'll post the link in the comments in a couple minutes. But this, I just wanted to say that in this interview, he talks about working with the Beatles. He talks about working with Lord of the Rings, and he says, and when they ask him, "What did you record Lord of the Rings on to make it sound so magical?" And he says, Neiman and M50s and the Avalon 2022 mic. Those same mics that they used at Abbey Road.
Yep. The same microphones.
So,
Wow.
you heard in that last clip that because they were using 3 different studios, he would go to each studio setup and set up the microphone exactly at the same angle.
Yes.
At the same height and at the same angle, because if you know, you've got a mic, like, look, you know, even this little cheap thing has got all these different angles, and you can set it upside down or whatever. So he talks about like creating a traveling kit with the same mics, the Avalon 2022s. Everyone wants to know why Lord of the Rings sounds so magical. It's these technical decisions made by these accomplished technicians and engineers that
Absolutely.
made magic.
You know, it sounds like getting into the weeds because, you know, you're mentioning a specific model number and a manufacturer for a microphone. But, you know, the end result is what matters most. And it was his professional attention to detail that, you know, that really provided Mr. Kurlander with the advantage. He knew from voluminous experience working with rock and rollers and other major orchestral works for other big Broadway cast recordings. He knew exactly what worked right and what didn't for the sound he was trying to capture. And with that expertise, no wonder Howard said, "You've got to say yes. Just they're going to call you. You just have to say yes." You know what? Give an extra credit, gold star, to Howard Shore for knowing to call his buddy and say, "This is
He
great.
called
We've
the
got to work
best.
with
He
you."
didn't just call his buddy. Howard Shore called the best. Howard
Absolutely.
Shore, I think in the
Absolutely.
music of Lord of the Rings, I think it's widely well known that Howard Shore, it was divinely inspired
Yeah.
in in working on Lord of the Rings.
Yes, indeed.
Is second only to possibly Star Wars as the most memorable music of all time. But when Howard Shore, working in divine providence, says, I
can
need the
hear
best in the world, I need the
need-
best in the world, they called this man, rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. Yes. I can hear Mozart's body turning over in its grave. But yes, you mean in terms of motion picture music, the most memorable of all time. But
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, I
And
get
then
that.
here's something that trended this week. Here's a clip from, again, one of those mics. Here we go. Let's
One of
play
those
it.
recording sessions. Wow.
Cliff.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That kid has such breath control, such voice control for a youngin'. That is so cool. That
You
is
know,
just so totally cool.
when you
That's
hear
cool.
when you hear that in the it sounds like it's coming from heaven itself. When you're in the movie and you're invested in the movie and you hear this stuff, you're invested. But bringing it back to real life, the magic is made by excellent men and women. And look at this kid, a soprano. He's what, a foot away from the mic.
Yes.
In the recording studio at Abbey Road, with a tie and a collar on.
He's probably in his school uniform. The dude probably just got out of school. He's in his British school uniform, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go into Abbey Road after school and do this." Oh my gosh, where is he now? You know what? We want to interview you now that you're 25 years older, right? As an adult, let's come on the show and let's talk about your experiences working and recording that magnificent vocal solo. What a great soloist you were, and probably still are.
But
although I imagine his voice has changed by now. But yeah, this is so
but
cool. Let's have an interview.
this supports this supports what John was just saying. How they recorded in little snippets, and they would just and then move to the next studio. Also interesting, if you caught that in the clip that we played, he said that the studio thought this was going to be recorded in 2 to 3 weeks,
Wow.
and it took 3 months.
Big mistake. Yeah, it took months and months and
But
months.
that's money,
Wow.
right? Um,
Yes, it is. In
it's
terms of
so
rehiring
expensive.
the musicians and rebooking the space again and making sure somebody else has not booked Abbey Road while you need to get in there with your orchestra. Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Make,
can you imagine the expense of rehiring over 3 months all those
I can't.
musicians?
I can't. That's so
But
wild to
this
me.
is this is one of the reasons why I really appreciate Amazon having infinite money and spending it all on Lord of the Rings. Bear McCreary is operating in the same capacity. He's working on Lord of the Rings, like
Mhm.
Rings of Power, for so long, for so many months, doing so much recording with his team. And credit to Amazon for putting the same amount of resources available to Howard Shore and John Kurlander here. Um, because, by the
Wow.
way, Bear McCreary posted a brand new blog on his website talking about the Damrod theme and the whole episode with Damrod. So that and
With all the
creating
cool heavy metal that he brought in, that
the
was
heavy
cool.
metal. He also talks
Yeah.
about just making a new theme for the Ents that's original to Rings of Power and unrelated to the movies. So
Yes.
great new blog. But something about reading a wall of text is different than hearing an engineer, like in this video, talk about how he does it.
Do you remember specifically what your preferences are? Or
Well, they were the main mics were they were my mics. They were Neumann M50s and Avalons. All the mic pre's. Well, the main mics were all Avalons, 2022s.
So something specific about the
Or was
Avalon?
it? I can't remember. 2022s.
I don't remember off the top of my
Oh,
head, but I
yeah.
know that I'm
Yeah,
pretty.
or 2020 maybe. I don't know.
Is there something specific about the Avalon that you love for
I
recording
don't know.
classical?
It was when I was still on staff at Abbey Road. We had Avalons as I mean, the desk was a naive 88, but the kind of fancy mic pre's that we'd bring in would be either Massenbergs or Avalons. So I kind of got a liking for the Avalons.
Again, they get technically in the weeds on this interview of like what mics,
Yeah.
what preamps, what boards.
That's
So
really cool.
again, we lost a Lord of the Rings legend that flew under the radar on purpose, but he was
Yes.
as important as anyone else to the success of Lord of the Rings. And the music, sound engineer, and recordist John Kurlander passed away this weekend. And he was so important that his name is on the Grammy Award, 3 of them, Fellowship, Towers,
Yes.
King. His name is on the Grammy Award and he won the Oscars as well with Howard Shore.
I wonder if David Farmer, who was John Kurlander's counterpart on the Hobbit trilogy, I wonder if they knew each other or shared knowledge and information about microphones and setups and what to use. Because, as we all know, the Hobbit film trilogy was also scored and recorded at Abbey Road. But they had brought in David Farmer, who had worked on King Kong with Peter Jackson. And he came in and worked where John Kurlander had been. And I'm just wondering out loud, because there's no way of knowing if they shared, conversations or knowledge about those particular microphones that Mr. Kurlander loved so much to use. That's just a fascinating side question. We'll have to, you know what? We'll have to invite Mr. David Farmer onto the show since he's still on the planet with us. And we should talk to him sometime about some of his experiences doing the score on The Hobbit. But I can imagine that there was a big brain trust where Howard Shore said, okay, we're coming back into the studio. We're doing more movies for The Hobbit, and let's share the brain trust. Let's share the experience and the techniques that John Kurlander had used, and probably, I would assume, that Mr. David Farmer was brought up to speed. I would imagine. That's pretty cool. And yeah, this is like losing an Andrew Lesney today. With Mr. Kurlander dying, it really is analogous to losing somebody who was your technician, your incredibly talented technician who did so much behind the scenes, all for the incredible enrichment of the end product. And yet, John Kurlander flew totally under the radar. Nobody ever talked about him. Nobody knew, except for the people in the industry. All the fans were busy talking about Howard Shore for years and years. That's all we've talked about. So we really should pay due respect and a very important acknowledgement to John Kurlander's contribution to the music and the soundscapes of Middle-earth that we love so much. It's very appropriate that we do this today. Yes.
Yes, huge loss to the incredible talent. I mean, at this
Yeah.
point,
Agreed.
does Warner Brothers call Howard Shore back for the new Lord of the Rings films? Has Howard Shore kind of moved on from Lord of the Rings?
That's a good side question. Yeah.
And can anyone capture the same magic as that most award-winning film series of all time did 25 years ago, if the team that made it are no longer with us? And we have to remember this as these new Lord of the Rings movies and projects come out. The people that made it great, they've passed on. Andrew Lesney is gone. You know,
Yes,
the
they
dialect
have.
coach, Jack, what's his name? Passed on. That helped
Yes.
nail the accents and the dialects for Lord of the Rings. And now
Yep.
John Kurlander has now passed on. So can you even capture you can't. The answer is you can't. You can't capture the same magic. You have to
You mean
create new
Andrew
magic.
Jack. You mean Andrew Jack.
Andrew
Yes.
Jack, that's right.
Andrew Jack is also gone. Yes, you're right. Oh my gosh.
There's been
And-
so
wow.
many people that we've lost over the years. And the latest one, John Kurlander. Shout out to our friend of the show, Jim J. Ware. Jim Ware for giving us a heads up on this monumental
Yes.
loss to the Lord of the
Yep.
Rings community. Of course, we send our best to his family and everybody that has ever worked with him. And I'm sure Howard Shore is
Yes, we do.
feeling the loss this week.
Yep.
Because it sounds like, you know, if Howard Shore says, hey, you're going to get a call, just say yes. It doesn't matter about anything else. Just say yes.
Yeah.
And he said
Wow.
yes. And next thing, and he's working for 4 years. So making
Yep.
magic that has affected our lives so much. So
Agreed.
there it is. Cliff, I think that's all I got for today. That's
Yeah, that's some very important bits of news and really important connections that will allow our audience to understand more of what it takes to actually put together a film project of that scale. It's historical to think that Howard wanted to work with somebody who had so much experience working with some of the biggest successful multiple Tony award-winning Broadway cast albums, and then to bring him in to win multiple Grammys and Oscars with him to work on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's just brilliant. And to the credit of all of the people working with Peter Jackson's production team and the people, you know, who we know a lot of people who worked with Howard Shore. It's to their credit that they wanted it to be the best, and they got John. They got John in there, and he was the best. And that was just perfect. It's what Lord of the Rings needed, and the results, as we know, stand the test of time. What is this little cartoon you've got here for me?
I mean,
Go ahead.
look, the fact that we have so many memes about
Yeah,
the
I get it.
music, you know,
Yes.
it's thanks
Yeah.
to Howard Shore, but it's thanks to Howard Shore's right hand man.
Yeah.
Again, Howard
Agreed.
Shore isn't as successful if John Kurlander hadn't figured out the technical way to work with the creative mind. And the creative
Yes.
mind can be a burdened mind, right? And the fact that John Kurlander, as he explained in that clip we showed, he found a
Mhm.
way to push Howard to be his most creative self.
Yes.
He said, it got crazy there. It got crazy. But he said he encouraged Howard to keep going further. Make that change. Do an update. We can fit it in. John Kurlander's the guy that figured out technically how to accomplish what Howard's incredible mind could only hear.
Yes. Agreed.
And
Well
and
said.
that's why
Very
we're
well
paying
said.
tribute. So
Well said. And very good. I'm really glad that Jim Wirt brought that to our attention. And Justin, I'm glad we had the bandwidth on today's show to talk about Mr. Kurlander and his great, really great stuff. So here's the thing. Before we close the show, we've had some conversation going through the chat about how old Aragorn was when he was talking to Eowyn. And Aragorn was born, believe it or not, on March 1st. And it happened in the year, shall we say, well, he met Eowyn and he met King Theoden in the Third Age of 3019. But he was born in the year 2931. So yeah, he would have been 88 years old. And it is just as likely that Aragorn was running around across all of Rohan trying to chase down Merry and Pippin, and maybe he forgot his birthday. It happened to Bilbo. Bilbo was escaping from, barrels out of Bond, and he was riding through this, stinking barrel out of the out of the Mirkwood Forest, and Bilbo didn't realize his birthday was passing at the time when it happened. So it might be that Peter Jackson messed up Aragorn's age. He was supposed to be 88, that's right, but maybe what he said to Eowyn in the extended edition is a bit different. Close, pretty close, but maybe he just didn't remember that it was his birthday, or Peter decided to set things off a couple of years. Who knows? But yes, yeah, isn't it crazy when you stop to think about how we are as fans? Hello, Matt, Nerd of the Rings, is here with us in the chat. Really pleasure to see you, Matt. I had a lovely conversation on the phone earlier today with Don Marshall, another wonderful content creator and Tolkien fan who we all love. Yeah, he says he's 87, but yeah, that's right. Thanks, Monica. Monica has the deets.
but everybody celebrates a birthday during the Fellowship journey because it takes over a year.
It does. So everyone hits a birthday, but I mean, we don't even know when Gandalf's birthday was. We don't even, of course, that's not possible to calculate because he was a Maiar spirit. So,
In the Second Age, and he came in a fireball. And do you
No, he did
count
not arrive in a
Gandalf's
fireball.
birthday?
No,
Do
he's
you
not
count
Meteor Man.
Gandalf's
No.
birthday from the day he is named, or the day he
No.
arrived in Middle Earth?
No, stop it. Stop it.
No,
You
that
have
I'm.
to stop
I
that.
have a. That's a
Are you
genuine
asking
question.
legitimately?
Yeah.
No. Gandalf has no birth date. He is eternal.
He needs no birthday.
He's an angelic birthday. And I mean, he's an angelic being who has no birth date. But yeah, okay. So Aragorn would have been 88, technically, according to the text. But Peter Jackson has it changed, so it happened. Okay. It is a delightful show, as always. And we conclude by, I need to appropriately take my hat off in honor John Kurlander. You were the best. You were the best. And we take our hat off to you. And my feelings and my thoughts out to his family, his surviving family, and of course Howard Shore at the loss of his compatriot and co-worker and friend.
I'm just kind of blown away this guy's career. I mean, the fact that he worked on the Abbey Road album for the Beatles.
Isn't that amazing?
And then he helped engineer most of their solo albums after they broke up. And then he scored Knights of the Old Republic and Dragon's Age and Skyrim and what? Like this guy
and Peter Jackson's King Kong. He did all that work too. Now, what's weird about that is we know that there was a sudden change with Howard Shore having some kind of disagreement with Peter Jackson, and James Newton Howard came in and did the score and replaced the stuff that Howard Shore had started writing. That is another story for another time. There were some problems with the King Kong production. It was very interesting. But yeah, we're losing our legends. We've lost our
We're losing
Bernard
our legends,
Hill.
but
We've lost our Andrew Lesney. Oh my God, we've lost Mr. Kurlander now as well.
but this is also why when you talk about
Someone
excellence,
protect John Williams. Someone please save John Williams and protect him at all costs, please.
but when you talk about the excellence of Lord of the Rings all the way through, it's
Yes.
because they hired the best.
True.
They hired the best. Howard Shore didn't just call a friend. He called the best. Right?
Yeah, he did. He really did. He
So,
called the best. And it worked out.
and it worked
And
out.
that's how it worked out. And history was made. Grammy history, Oscar history, made year after year after year. Oh my gosh. That does leave me with one last question before we close the show tonight. Will Andy Serkis be able to negotiate and get Howard Shore to come back and work on the music for The Hunt for Gollum? I really wonder. Yes, Otaku Senpai, you're right. Please protect Hayao Miyazaki at all costs. Please protect him. Angels above, bless and protect Miyazaki, even though he's probably like done and he wants to retire and just relax right now. But, he's going to come back and do something. He always does. It is a unique pleasure to have everyone here with us. And now it's time we say farewell.
Oh my God.
No, we've got one more. We've got one more.
Andy
We're almost
Serkis.
at the 90-minute mark. We're almost
Andy
there.
Serkis says that Matt Reeves has told him the story for the Batman 2.
What? Oh, so he's going to go back and play Alfred again. Okay, cool. Wait, he has to make a Lord of the Rings movie and he has to go back and work on set with Matt Reeves and be in the next Batman film? He's a busy man. Wow.
And Cliff, do you remember who the cinematographer of the Batman is?
Oh, well, that would be our buddy Greg Fraser. Yes. Our
Wait,
buddy
wait,
Greg
wait,
Fraser.
Wait.
It all comes back. It all comes
Does-
back.
Does Andy
Yes.
Serkis
Yes.
do the Batman 2 with Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser? And then does Andy Serkis help convince Greg Fraser while they're working together on the Batman
Ooh, yes.
to come on over to Lord of the
Yes.
Rings?
I love that. Yes, I love that. I love the way you think.
And Greg
That
will be
sounds
like,
great.
yeah, I talked to the guys at
That
the One
sounds
Ring.net,
great.
of course. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. The guys at the OneRing.net said it has to happen this way. So make it happen. Make it so, number one.
it's gotta
Make it
gotta
so.
happen. It's gotta happen.
It
Next
must
week,
happen.
next week
Absolutely.
we have more news to talk about with Andy Serkis and a bunch of other stuff. We just ran out of time to talk about the other stuff I want to talk about, but we'll hold that to next week. So,
It's okay.
breaking
we
news.
have another good show next week. Yes.
Yeah,
You know what? I love that. I love that Andy Serkis is literally going to get to work with Greg Fraser again. That's so cool. Maybe this
And
is
then
where the
he's
Venn
working,
diagram.
and Andy's directing Lord of the
overlaps.
Rings. The question is,
Yes.
does Andy direct Lord of the Rings before Batman starts, or does Andy do Lord of the Rings Hunt for Gollum, and then jump over to Batman? I almost feel like
it's-
Hunt for Gollum gets pushed because Andy needs to do the Batman.
I think that Andy Serkis might do a couple of weeks of filming, not going to be there for a long principal photography. And then Andy can go and be free to go to New Zealand and work on his film. So, yes, that could happen.
And I just checked, the Batman 2 is shooting this year.
This year? Well,
Matt
so is
Reeves
The Hunt for Gollum. Oh,
So what comes
okay,
first?
Okay.
The Batman or Hunt for Gollum? I want Andy to shoot his scenes with the Batman first and convince Greg Fraser.
Yep. I want that to happen too.
Because Greg is going to do the Batman and then he's got to do Dune Part 3, maybe.
Oh gosh, but if they expand Hunt for Gollum to be more than one movie, such as the stuff that Sir Ian McKellen playfully mentioned, that's going to be a very big production
This is
schedule.
all
Oh my
coming
gosh.
up good for Lord of the Rings fans. I'm telling you, we're
I
excited.
agree.
So, hey, if you're with us till the end and you're an Oscar voter, again, check out our interview with Greg Fraser. It's at the youtube.com/theoneringnnet. 2 hours. He geeks out with us about a bunch of stuff. Wonderful conversation about Andrew Lesnie's legacy and his
Nice.
work on Dune 2. Incredible. He is nominated. Vote this week for Greg Fraser, Best Cinematography, Dune Part 2. That's all I
Yes,
got, Cliff.
Oscar voters, you better do it. That's all I've got. We're going to close the show and say thank you, everybody, and good night. But we're also going to say the usual. Please follow us on our socials at The One Ring Net. Take out the dot. We've got more news and announcements on our main page at theonering.net. That's right. You can still use a web browser. Those things still exist. You kids are awesome. I think the kids are all right. It's a pleasure to it's a pleasure to have you here with me, Justin, and it's a wonderful chat as always. Wonderful friends. We couldn't be here without all of you. And so here we are, continuing with our best news and rumors and opinions. But of course, this is a moment of remembrance and mourning for the late John Kurlander, a master at his craft and a master technician who knew how to make unbelievable sonic magic in the most famous recordings that we've heard in our lifetimes, from the Beatles to West Side Story, down to Cowboys and Aliens, right on down to the Lord of the Rings and everything in between. Knights of the Old Republic fans, raise your lightsabers tonight in honor of the great John Kurlander. We say goodnight to you all. Please join us again next week, right here, Tuesday afternoon at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us for another merry gathering. As Treebeard might say, 'tis a gathering. We'll be here at the same bat time, same bat channel. Sorry, I had to get the Matt Reeves jokes in there. You guys, we're going to miss you until next week. Please be gentle with one another. Kindness and generosity and, the bright hope that Tolkien leaves us with. Let's have that all in our hearts as we go forward in this difficult time. So thank you all for being with us, and I say good night and good luck. Or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye-bye, everybody.